Welcome to Talk Treatises.
It's good to be here.
So today we are making a pretty significant shift, a geographical one, but also, an intellectual one.
A big one, yeah.
We've spent a lot of our recent time really deep in the weeds of the Western canon. We've been looking at these heavy structural logics of European thought.
The architectures of Kant, for sure.
Exactly. The social contracts, the categorical imperatives, all very architectural, as you say. But today we're heading east.
We are. We're tackling a text that is, and this is not an exaggeration, one of the most translated and most quoted works in all of human history.
And I would argue one of the most misunderstood.
Oh, absolutely. It really suffers from its own popularity.
How so?
Well, it gets reduced to these, bumper stickers or these vague New Age affirmations about going with the flow.
Right, be like water.
Exactly. It's become the patron saint of being chill.
Yeah.
But when you actually sit down and engage with the text itself, with the rigor it really demands, you find something so much more radical.
More piercing.
Yes, and frankly, far more difficult to grapple with than the pop culture version even hints at. We are, of course, discussing the Tao Teh King.
Or, as it's more commonly known now, the Tao Teh King.
That's the one.
Right. And just to set the stage for you listening, we are treating this with the same intellectual rigor we'd apply to Wittgenstein or Hobbes.
No fortune cookies here.
No fortune cookies. We want to understand the mechanics of this philosophy. So give us the context. Where are we in history? And more importantly, what is the problem this text is trying to solve?
Okay, so we're most likely in the Warring States period of ancient China.
Yep.
Or maybe in the chaotic decline of the Zhou dynasty that, led up to it.
Time of intense turmoil.
Unbelievable turmoil. The traditional author is Laozi, an archivist, but, scholars debate if he was a real person or a composite figure, a tradition. But honestly, the authorship is less important than the context.
And the context is chaos.
Total chaos. This is not a text written in a time of peace where philosophers are sitting around debating abstract ideas in a salon. This is a text written when the world was literally tearing itself apart.
Constant warfare.
Constant warfare, societal collapse, ambitious warlords everywhere, and this profound exhaustion. A complete exhaustion with the failure of human institutions.
That is such a crucial reframe. I think a lot of people imagine this old sage sitting on a mountaintop, just musing about nature because he likes trees.
No, not at all.
But you're saying this is a survival manual.
Precisely. It is a direct response to the problem of chaos and exhaustion. You have to understand, the other intellectual currents of the time, especially what would become Confucianism, they were trying to solve this chaos by adding more.
More structure.
More structure, more rules, more rituals, more definitions of goodness, more rigid hierarchies. And the Tao Teh King looks at that whole approach and says, that is not the cure, that is the disease. The whole intellectual mission here is to understand the underlying mechanics of the universe, the Tao, and to prove that human order, real order, can only be preserved by aligning with that reality, not by trying to engineer some counter-reality through force and ambition and, endless legislation.
So it's almost a diagnostic approach. The patient society is sick.
Yes.
The Confucians are coming in and prescribing this strict regimen of, exercise and discipline and rules. Mm-hmm. And the Taoist doctor walks in and just says, stop moving, stop everything. You're making the inflammation worse.
That is a perfect analogy. The text posits that the chaos is caused by human interference, by the imposition of our artificial will onto natural processes. So the cure is a radical subtraction.
Okay, so if we had to distill this entire very slippery work into a single thesis statement, which I know is almost a violation of its spirit, but let's do it for the sake of structure. What's the core argument?
The thesis is that the underlying reality of the universe, the Tao, operates through what we could call female or yielding principles: softness, emptiness, obscurity, non-action. The text argues that true power, true longevity, true order, and this is for a person or a political state, it comes only from aligning with this yielding principle.
And not the opposite.
Any attempt to rely on the male principle force, assertion, rigidity, brightness, it argues that inevitably leads to decay and death.
That distinction, male and female principles, is just fascinating, especially for that era. I mean, we're talking about a highly patriarchal, martial society. Mm-hmm. Strength meant chariots and spears and bronze.
Absolutely. The harder, the better.
And this text comes along and says, no. The real strength is the ravine. The real strength is the infant. The real strength is water.
It's a complete inversion of all their values. It asserts that the things we typically associate with weakness, being soft, being low, being receptive, are actually the reservoirs of life. And the things we praise as strength are really just symptoms of oncoming death.
A stiff branch is a dead branch.
Exactly. The living branch is supple. It bends.
Okay, let's unpack this. And we have to start where the text starts. Section 1 of our analysis has to be the metaphysics. We have to talk about the Tao itself. The opening chapter is famous for a reason, but it's also a logical headache.
It is. The Tao that can be trodden is not the enduring and unchanging Tao.
Or, the name that can be named is not the eternal name. Right away, it's telling you that language is going to fail.
It's a disclaimer for the entire book. The author immediately confronts this paradox of language. We're about to use words to discuss something that, by its very nature, exists prior to words.
So how does it handle that?
It makes this brilliant distinction between the nameless and the named.
Okay.
The nameless is the originator of heaven and earth. It's the source code, the unmanifested potentiality of everything. The named is the mother of all things. That's the world we see, the world of differentiated objects, of this versus that.
This reminds me of the map is not the territory idea, but it feels deeper than that.
Much deeper.
It seems to be saying that the moment you define something, the second you put a linguistic box around a concept, you've killed it. You've cut it off from the eternal flow.
You've pinned it down like a butterfly in a display case.
Right.
And that's exactly the point. Language functions by creating boundaries. To call something beautiful, the text says, you immediately create the concept of ugly.
It's a package deal.
It is. To call something long is to invent short. To define skill is to invent clumsiness. We live in this world of dualities, of pairs, because our language and our cognition force us to chop reality into pieces. But the Tao is the unity behind all those pieces.
The thing that exists before you make the first cut.
Yes. The text calls it the mystery. It says that if we're always full of desire, meaning always looking for specific outcomes, specific things, names, we only ever see the outer fringe. We see the manifestations.
The symptoms.
The symptoms, the effects. But if we can be without desire, without that grasping need to label and possess everything, then we can gaze into the deep mystery.
It's so interesting that desire is the key there. It links epistemology, how we know things, with psychology, what we want. Like if I'm thirsty and I want a cup of coffee, I stop seeing the ceramic, the atoms, the history of the clay, the artisan who made it. I just see vessel for caffeine.
That's it. Your desire narrows your reality. It collapses the mystery into a simple tool.
And the text is asking us to widen that aperture back out, to see the whole thing.
To see the gate of all subtleties. It asks us to look at that space before the distinction is made. Before you called it a cup, what was it? Before you called yourself successful or a failure, what were you? That underlying unnamed substance is the Tao.
Which leads right into the cosmogony of the text. Specifically in chapters like 25 and 42, gives us the sequence. The Tao produced one.
One produced two, two produced three, and three produced all things.
Three produced all things. I find that progression so fascinating. Can we break down that math? It's obviously not literal arithmetic.
No, it's not. It feels more like a generative algorithm, doesn't it?
It does.
It's symbolic cosmology. The Tao is the void, the zero, what in later thought is called Wuji. The one is that first spark of existence, the Taiji, the singular reality before any division.
Okay, so we have unity.
Then the two is the first great differentiation, yin and yang. The receptive and the active, the dark and the light, the static and the dynamic.
And then three, what's the third element?
Three is the interaction between those two forces. It's often interpreted as qi, the vital breath or energy of life that arises from the tension and harmony between yin and yang, and from that dynamic interaction.
The 10,000 things.
The 10,000 things, which is just the classic Chinese idiom for everything. The entire manifold universe just explodes into existence.
So you have this explosion of diversity, all the things in the world, but the text doesn't seem very interested in cataloging them, does it? It's not a biology textbook.
Not at all. It's interested in the trajectory. Where are all these things going? The key metaphysical takeaway isn't just, here's how things started. It's, here's where they are all going. And the text emphasizes this again and again. Reverting to the root.
Reverting to the root.
It just observes nature. A plant grows, it flourishes, it produces a flower, a fruit, and then what?
It dies and goes back into the soil.
It returns to the root, to stillness.
Returning to the root is called stillness. Stillness is called returning to the decree. It's a cycle.
It's a universal law, and the argument seems to be, Why are you fighting the return journey? Why are we as humans so obsessed with just the blooming phase of life?
The expansion, the growth, the noise.
Yes, all that, when the underlying reality, the destination, is the silence of the root.
That feels like the fundamental anxiety the text is trying to address. We're terrified of the root. We're terrified of the silence because it looks like non-existence to our ego.
Exactly. So we fill it with noise, with names, with achievements, with drama. But the text has this warning. It says, "He who stands on tiptoes does not stand firm."
That's such a visceral image.
Isn't it? If you try to artificially extend the blooming phase, if you're constantly on your tiptoes trying to be taller, more visible, more important, you lose your connection to the ground.
You become top-heavy.
You become top-heavy. And in a metaphysical sense, being top-heavy is fatal.
You can stand on your tiptoes for a minute to get something off a high shelf, but you can't live there. You can't build a house on tiptoes.
And yet, look at the warring states, period. Or, look at our modern era.
Right.
We are societies built on tiptoes, constant growth, constant expansion, constant assertion. The Taoist view is that this posture is inherently unstable, and it will self-correct.
Usually violently, yes.
This brings us perfectly to the second main section of our analysis, the utility of emptiness. It's ontology, the study of being, but it's a kind of negative ontology. It focuses on non-being.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this brilliant set of analogies in chapter 11 that I think explains this better than any abstract philosophy ever could. The wheel, the vessel, and the room. This is one of the most lucid and powerful arguments in the entire text. It's so simple and so profound. We tend to focus on what exists.
On the stuff.
On the stuff. If you look at a wheel, you see the spokes, the rim, the wood, the iron. We admire the craftsmanship of the 30 spokes. But the text points out that all those spokes unite in the nave of the center hub.
Okay.
But it is on the empty space for the axle that the entire use of the wheel depends.
The hole in the middle.
The hole.
Yeah.
The nothingness. If that hub were a solid block of wood, the wheel would be useless. It wouldn't turn. It is the hole that gives the somethingness its function.
It's the negative space that allows the positive space to work. And the vessel, the clay pot, is the same idea.
Exactly the same. We take clay, we mold it into a shape, we pay for the clay, we admire the glaze on the clay, but you can't put soup in a solid block of clay.
You just have a mess.
It's the hollow space inside, the part that is not clay, that actually holds the water or the soup. The utility comes from what is not there.
And the room we're sitting in right now.
Perfect example. We build walls, we cut out doors and windows, we obsess over the paint color, the flooring, the molding. But we don't live in the walls.
We inhabit the empty space.
We inhabit the empty space. The argument here is just, it's so profound. We work with what has existence, but our utility comes from what has no existence.
And that's a direct critique of our obsession with accumulation, isn't it?
It's a total critique. We think we need to add things to ourselves, add knowledge, add wealth, add status to become useful or valuable. The Taoist view is the opposite. We need to hollow ourselves out.
We need to become empty vessels.
So that the Tao can flow through us. If you are full of yourself, full of your own opinions, your anxieties, your grand plans, you're like that solid block of clay. You're useless to the universe.
It really challenges the whole Western idea of, being full of character or being a big personality.
It does.
The Taoist ideal seems to become almost transparent. It suggests our value isn't in our stuff, whether it's mental or physical, but in our capacity to contain and to channel.
That's a great way to put it. And it connects directly to the concept of the valley spirit in chapter 6.
The valley spirit dies not, I the same. The female mystery thus do we name.
Why a valley? Think about the geometry of it. A valley is low. It is an indentation in the earth. It's defined by what it's not. It's not a mountain.
And because it's low.
All the water flows into it. It receives. It doesn't strive to be a mountain peak, all jagged and high. It creates a space for life to gather. The text calls this the root of heaven and earth. It's soft, it's receptive, and it's inexhaustible because it's always being filled.
The imagery is so specific and so powerful. The mountain is phallic, projecting, hard, isolated. The valley is yonic, receptive, soft, and fertile.
Yes. And the female mystery here is the power of reception rather than projection. In that patriarchal warring state society obsessed with male projection, spears, towers, commands, the text is saying you have it all backward.
The valley survives the storm.
The valley survives the storm. The mountain peak gets eroded down to nothing. The valley is closer to the Tao because the Tao is the ultimate source. And sources are usually deep and hidden and low-lying.
It's a complete inversion of the hero narrative we're so used to.
Right.
The hero always climbs the mountain.
The sage sinks into the valley.
And this naturally, inevitably, leads us to the most famous and maybe the most difficult concept in the whole book. Wu Wei.
Yes, Wu Wei.
Non-action.
Literally no action or non-doing. But we have to be so careful here. This is where the interpretation usually goes completely off the rails.
It's not apathy.
It is not apathy. It is not laziness. It is not sitting on the couch eating potato chips and calling it spiritual.
So what is it? Because the text gives us this paradox. The Tao in its regular course does nothing, and so there is nothing which it does not do.
Right. Nothing is done, yet nothing is left undone.
How do we reconcile that? Because to a modern ear, doing nothing means the dishes pile up, the emails go unanswered, and you get fired.
Think about the difference between learning and the Tao, which the text highlights in chapter 48. It says something like, he who devotes himself to learning seeks from day to day to increase.
To add more facts.
To add more facts, more skills, more complexities, it adds layers. But he who devotes himself to the Tao seeks from day to day to diminish.
To subtract.
To subtract, to strip things away. Wu Wei is the state of acting without friction. It's acting in accordance with the natural grain of reality. It's the difference between, say, swimming furiously upstream,
which requires immense action and effort,
but results in very little movement, maybe even moving backward. It's the difference between that and just floating downstream, which requires almost non-action, but moves you vast distances with no effort.
So it's about efficiency and alignment. It sounds a little bit like the modern concept of a flow state, in sports or music.
That's a perfect modern parallel.
When a jazz musician is really improvising well, they aren't thinking about the notes in a conscious, forced way. They aren't forcing the melody. They're letting it happen. It's happening through them.
Yes. When you're in the zone, you are not striving. You're not efforting. The action is happening through you. Wu Wei is the attempt to live your entire life in that state. It's about avoiding the forced action, the action that comes from ego, from anxiety, from the desire to impress or control. That kind of action always generates resistance.
And the text's favorite metaphor for this is water, isn't it? Chapter 8 and chapter 78 are all about water.
The highest excellence is like that of water. Water is the ultimate avatar of Wu Wei. Just consider its properties. Water benefits all things. It keeps everything alive, but it doesn't compete.
It just flows.
It flows.
Oh.
And it occupies the low places that men dislike. It flows into the sewers, the gutters, the mud. It doesn't have an ego that says, I am too good for this ditch.
It has no shape of its own, so it can take on any shape. It goes into a cup, it becomes the cup.
And yet, and this is the paradox of strength in chapter 78, there is nothing in the world more soft and weak than water. And yet, for attacking things that are firm and strong, there is nothing that can take precedence of it.
Right. A constant drip of water will eventually cut a hole through solid rock. A tsunami, which is just water in motion, will level a stone city.
The soft overcomes the hard, and this applies directly to human interaction and strategy. The text says things like, gravity is the root of lightness, stillness, the ruler of movement. If you're rigid, like a dry branch, you snap in the wind.
But if you're supple, like a green reed, you bend and survive.
Wu Wei is the art of being the reed. It is the strategy of yielding to conquer. The text is very explicit about this. The partial becomes complete, the crooked, straight. It's a total reversal of our values. We think we need to straighten the crooked thing by force.
The Tao says, let it twist. And in its twisting, it finds its own strange integrity.
It finds its strength. It's a powerful idea that resilience is superior to brute strength. The great oak tree looks much stronger than the bamboo.
Until the hurricane comes.
Exactly. The oak falls and the bamboo just snaps back up when it's over.
So this isn't just about personal survival. It's about strategy.
Oh, absolutely. The text advises not to contend. Because he does not contend, no one in the world can contend with him. If you're empty, if you offer no resistance, there's nothing for an opponent to strike. You become like smoke or water. You can't punch water.
So if we apply this to the social world, and the text very much does, we get a really scathing social critique. This is section 4 of our discussion. The author seems to have this hierarchy of decline that explains how a society falls apart.
Yes, in chapter 18 and 38. And this is one of the most provocative parts of the book, especially for the Confucian-dominated world it was entering.
Okay, so what is this ladder of descent?
At the very top, you have the Tao, the natural, spontaneous order of things. When the great Tao is lost, benevolence appears, or kindness, Ren.
So our virtues are actually symptom of a disease.
Precisely.
If you have to start talking about benevolence all the time, it's only because people aren't naturally kind to each other anymore.
That's it exactly. You don't need a law that says, don't willingly eat poison. You only need laws when people have lost the natural instinct for what's healthy.
And after benevolence is lost,
Then righteousness appears. Or justice ye. Now you need contracts and laws and judges to force people to be fair.
and after righteousness,
When righteousness is lost, propriety appears. Ritual, etiquette, ceremony, lie.
so in a healthy family, you don't talk about duty or filial piety. You just love each other. The moment you have to write up a contract about who does the dishes.
The love is already gone. The text says, when harmony no longer prevailed throughout the 6 kinships, filial sons found their manifestation. The appearance of the good man or the loyal minister is proof that the state is already rotten.
It's a critique of moralizing itself. The more society preaches about morality, the more fundamentally immoral it must be.
And the absolute bottom of the barrel is propriety. Rituals, manners, the correct way to bow, the correct clothes to wear. The text calls this the attenuated form of leal-heartedness and the commencement of disorder.
Wait, why is propriety the commencement of disorder? That seems counterintuitive. It seems like it would be the start of order.
Because propriety is purely external. It's a performance. It's what the text calls the flower of the Tao, not the fruit. It's all superficial. When you see a society that's obsessed with protocol, with signaling virtue, with strict codes of conduct.
The Tao Teh King sees a society that has completely lost its interconnection to what's real.
Yes. It's a society running on fumes, trying to hold itself together with external bands of iron because the internal gravity, the internal coherence is gone. And because it's forced, it breeds resentment. If I force you to bow to me, you might do it, but you'll hate me for it. And that hatred is the seed of future chaos.
And the solution the text proposes to this is, it's radical. It's almost anti-intellectual. Renounce wisdom and discard learning.
It is. Chapter 19 and 20 are very clear. Renounce wisdom and the people will be 100-fold happier. The sage is described not as a genius, but as a stupid man.
My mind is that of a stupid man. I'm in a state of chaos. While other men are sharp and discriminating, the sage is dull and confused. Why is stupidity a virtue here? It feels like we're just praising ignorance.
We have to define wisdom as it was understood then in the context of the Warring States philosophers. Wisdom meant sophistry. It meant cleverness. The ability to argue, to categorize, to divide the world into little boxes, to scheme.
It was about being clever.
It was. And the Taoist critique is that this cleverness is precisely what ruins the world. It creates complexity where there should be simplicity. It creates artificial desires where there should be contentment.
So stupidity here is more like simplicity, innocence, maybe.
Yes, it's the concept of Pu the uncarved block. The text uses this metaphor a lot. A block of wood that hasn't been carved into a bowl or a statue or a weapon has infinite potential. Once you carve it, it becomes useful for one thing, but it's now useless for everything else. The sage wants to return his mind to the state of the uncarved block, to the state of an infant. An infant doesn't know the difference between a diamond and a piece of glass, and because of that,
The infant is free from the greed for the diamond.
exactly. The sage wants to return the people to that state, which is described in chapter 3 as emptying their minds and filling their bellies.
Empty their minds, fill their bellies, weaken their wills, strengthen their bones. It sounds, it sounds almost like a recipe for keeping a population docile and controlled.
It certainly can be read that way.
Is this political philosophy? Or is it spiritual advice for an individual?
It is absolutely political philosophy. And that leads us straight into section 5. The Tao Teh King is not just a book of advice for hermits, it's a manual for kings.
But a style of leadership that's radically different from the great man theory of history we're used to.
Completely different. Chapter 17 outlines the rankings of rulers, and it's stunning.
Right. The worst ruler is despised by the people. The second worst is feared.
Then the next one up, the second best, is loved and praised. People sing songs about him.
But the best ruler, the highest level,
People don't know he exists.
the invisible leader, that's the ultimate goal.
It is. When the best ruler's work is done, the people look around at their peaceful, prosperous lives and they say, we are as we are of ourselves. They believe they achieved it all spontaneously. They don't even realize they were being guided.
That's the ultimate application of Wu Wei to statecraft. The ruler shouldn't be micromanaging or constantly legislating or making grand speeches.
The ruler should be like the cook in chapter 60.
Yeah.
Governing a great state is like cooking small fish.
Meaning, if you poke them around too much, they fall apart into mush.
That's it, exactly. Think about cooking a delicate piece of fish.
Yeah.
If you keep flipping it and checking it and seasoning it and poking it with a fork, you destroy it. It turns into a mess. You have to apply the right heat and then leave it alone.
So the text is saying, don't overgovern. Don't constantly poke at the people with new laws, new taxes, new wars.
Because the society will disintegrate. The master of the Tao practices a kind of laissez-faire that goes way beyond economics. It's an ontological hands-off approach. It trusts the organism of the state to heal itself if you just remove the constant interference.
It's the leadership of facilitating, not directing. Setting the right conditions for success and then stepping back into the shadows.
Yes, the leader who takes the blame for any failure but gives all the credit for success to the people. It's the ultimate expression of a lack of ego.
Speaking of poking society, we have to talk about war. The warring states period was, well, it was defined by war. What's the Taoist stance on violence?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be purely pacifist. It seems to acknowledge that war happens.
It's not strictly pacifist in the sense of never fight no matter what, but it regards weapons as instruments of evil omen. Chapter 31 says the man of Tao hates using them. If war is absolutely unavoidable, the proper attitude is one of deep sorrow and regret.
It's a tragedy.
A profound tragedy. The text says victory should be treated like a funeral rite. You should weep for the slaughter. You don't throw a victory parade. You don't glorify the generals. You recognize that even a necessary war is a massive failure of the Tao.
There's some fascinating tactical advice in there too, isn't there? Something about being the host versus the guest.
I do not dare to be the host. I prefer to be the guest.
What does that mean in a military context?
The host is the one who initiates the engagement, who advances, who sets the terms of the battle. The guest is the one who responds. So the Taoist general takes a defensive posture. He yields, he waits, he lets the enemy exhaust their energy, their supplies, their morale in the attack.
He retires a foot rather than advancing an inch. It's judo.
It's military judo. You use the opponent's aggression against them, but the warning is always there. Where a host is stationed, briars and thorns spring up. War ruins the land. It ruins the economy. It's a failure, even if you win.
The message is pretty clear. Don't start it. But if you're forced to finish it, be sad about it and do it by letting your opponent defeat themselves.
And always remember the water metaphor. Water doesn't attack the rock head on. It flows around it, envelops it, and wears it down over time. The Taoist strategy is enveloping, not piercing.
And finally, in this section, we have the vision of the ideal state in chapter 80. And this is where the text gets very specific and, to a modern reader, honestly, quite retrograde.
It's a tough one for us, for sure.
It describes a small state with few people. They have boats and carriages, but they don't use them. They have armor and weapons, but they don't display them. And they're so isolated.
That even though they can hear the roosters crowing in the neighboring village, they live and die without ever visiting.
It's a vision of extreme localism, a rejection of everything our modern world is built on.
A rejection of globalization, of cosmopolitanism, of progress itself. The idea is that technology like boats and carriages and connectivity like visiting your neighbors just breeds desire. If I see what they have in the next town, I might want it.
If I travel, I might become dissatisfied with my own simple home.
Yes. The text wants to return to the use of knotted cords, which was a pre-literate method of record keeping. It argues that happiness is found in simplifying life down to the absolute basics. Delighting in your own simple food, your own simple clothes, and your own immediate community.
It's basically a degrowth manifesto from 2,500 years ago. It's saying that more is not better.
It's saying that progress is actually a regress from sanity. It questions the fundamental assumption that more travel, more tech, more news, more stuff is better. It asks, are you actually happier knowing what's happening on the other side of the world, or does it just create a constant low-level anxiety?
That's a question that feels more relevant today than ever. So let's pivot to section 6, legacy and modern relevance. This text didn't just disappear into a library. It shaped the DNA of East Asia.
The influence is massive, and it's often contradictory. On the one hand, you have the spiritual lineage. It merged with Buddhism when it came to China, and that fusion created Chan, which we know as Zen Buddhism.
That makes perfect sense. The focus on emptiness, spontaneity, direct experience of reality without words.
That's the Taoist influence right there. But on the other hand, and this is much stranger, it also influenced legalism.
Legalism, the harsh, authoritarian, burn-the-books philosophy of the Qin dynasty that unified China.
The very same.
Wait, how does don't poke the small fish lead to totalitarianism? That seems like a complete contradiction.
It happens through that concept of the hidden ruler. The legalists loved the idea of the ruler being mysterious, unknowable, operating behind the scenes while the machinery of the state, the laws, ran automatically. They stripped out all the compassion and yielding from the Tao and just kept the mechanics of invisible control.
They liked the part about keeping the people simple and ignorant.
They loved that part from chapter 65. But instead of doing it for the people's happiness and contentment, they did it for the absolute security of the state. It's a dark mirror of the philosophy.
That is genuinely terrifying. It just shows how any philosophy, no matter how gentle its intent, can be weaponized.
For sure. But more broadly, it influenced military strategy. Sun Tzu's Art of War is deeply Taoist in its emphasis on formlessness, deception, and winning without fighting.
And obviously things like traditional Chinese medicine and martial arts, Tai Chi is literally embodied Taoism.
Yielding to overcome force, moving with an opponent's energy rather than trying to block it head on, it's all there.
Let's press on that darker side for a moment. What are the strongest objections to this philosophy today? Because when I read chapter 65, I get a little chill. It says the ancient masters practiced the Tao not to enlighten the people, but rather to make them simple and ignorant. That sounds an awful lot like keeping the population dumb so they are easy to rule.
And that is the strongest critique. Is this just a philosophy of obscurantism? Is it a tool for tyranny, whether benevolent or not? If you convince people that wisdom is bad and travel is dangerous, you end up with a very controllable, isolated peasant class.
A modern liberal critic would say that Tao Teh King denies human agency. It denies the value of progress, of science, of exploration. It seems to value survival and contentment over achievement and discovery.
It calls curiosity a vice in some interpretations.
Which is a very hard pill for us to swallow.
Right.
Love curiosity. We're podcast hosts. Our entire job is curiosity.
Exactly. This text would very likely tell us to stop recording immediately.
And the other big objection is just impracticality. Can a modern state of 300 million people really function by doing nothing? If the government just stops maintaining the roads or regulating the banks or running the healthcare system, we don't get spontaneous order.
We get warlords and collapse. We get the purge.
Exactly. It's the Hobbesian objection. The state of nature is nasty, brutish, and short, not some peaceful, harmonious valley.
And that's a valid critique. However, a defender of the Tao would argue that we've never actually tried real Wu Wei in government. We've only ever tried incompetence and overreach.
What's the difference?
Wu Wei isn't negligence. It's hypercompetence that looks like nothing is happening. It's the difference between a bad driver who is constantly sawing at the steering wheel and slamming the brakes, that's high action, low result, and a Formula One driver who makes these tiny micro adjustments that are barely visible to the naked eye. That's low action, high result. That's Wu Wei.
That connects really well to modern systems thinking, doesn't it?
How so?
The idea that complex systems like an economy or an ecosystem or the internet have their own intelligence. If you try to engineer them from the top down, you just create these unpredictable feedback loops and side effects that usually make things worse.
Precisely. We talk about rewilding in ecology, stepping back and letting nature heal itself. We talk about laissez-faire economics. The Tao Teh King is really the grandfather of this idea that the system is often smarter than the individuals trying to control it. It suggests that if we just start forcing the outcome, the system will self-organize into a more robust and sustainable state than anything we could have planned.
This is a perfect segue into our thought experiment segment. We're going to take these ancient, subtle ideas and stretch them to their breaking point in some modern, outlandish scenarios.
And a quick disclaimer for everyone listening, these are purely for entertainment and educational purposes. We're just having fun exploring the ideas.
All right. Thought experiment number 1. The Wu Wei algorithmic government.
Okay, I'm listening.
Imagine a future where we replace the entire legislative and executive branch of a country with a super intelligent AI. But this AI isn't programmed to maximize GDP or happiness. It's programmed strictly on the principles of the Tao Teh King. Its core directives are Chapter 17, be the ruler no one knows exists, and Chapter 60, don't poke the small fish.
So it governs by hiding and by not interfering.
Exactly. This AI does not pass new laws. In fact, its primary function is to analyze the existing legal code and systematically remove laws that are creating friction and unintended consequences.
A government of subtraction.
Yes. It manages the traffic grid, the logistics network, the energy flow, but it does so invisibly. It doesn't put up new stop signs or speed cameras. Instead, it subtly alters the timing of autonomous vehicles by microseconds so they flow through intersections like water, never needing to stop.
Okay, I see.
It solves crime not by police crackdowns, which the text says create briars and thorns, but by subtly adjusting economic incentives and opportunities in high crime areas so that crime becomes an irrational, unnecessary choice.
The water method of social control. It removes the resistance rather than fighting the resistance. It's the ultimate nudge unit.
Yes, and here's the twist. If the AI works perfectly, as designed, the population completely forgets that it exists. No one votes, no one debates policy, no one even knows the ruler is there. They look at their safe, prosperous, frictionless lives and they say, we did this ourselves. We are as we are of ourselves.
That is a fascinating utopia that is also a dystopia.
Right.
It's a utopia because it works. It eliminates the friction of politics, the polarization, the anger. But it's a dystopia because it represents the ultimate infantilization of the human race. We become the happy, simple people of Chapter 80. We lose the struggle.
And the question is, what happens if the AI breaks?
Oh, wow.
Do we have any muscle memory left? Do we remember how to be righteous or benevolent when we have to be? Or have we become so soft, so valley-like, that we just collapse into chaos because we've forgotten how to build things ourselves?
It really questions whether struggle and friction are actually necessary for human dignity and resilience. The Tao seems to say no, struggle is just an error, a sign of being out of alignment.
But our entire Western humanist tradition might say that struggle is the whole point. That without the ability to make the wrong choice, the right choice has no meaning.
It definitely puts the ignorance is bliss argument to the ultimate test. If the AI keeps our bellies full and our minds empty of political strife, are we better off? The Tao says yes. I'm not so sure.
Okay. Thought experiment number 2. The corporate strategy of the female valley.
All right, let's do a corporate one.
Let's imagine a massive tech corporation, we'll call it Valley Corp, that decides to adopt the strategy of Chapter 61. The great state is like a low-lying stream.
So instead of being aggressive and dominant, it tries to be the lowest point in the market.
Exactly. Most tech companies try to be the peak. They want the highest prices, the most patents, the most exclusive brand, the walled garden. Valley Corp does the absolute opposite. It refuses to patent anything. It makes all of its core technology open source. It actively absorbs all the waste of the tech industry, failed startups, discarded ideas, open source projects that lose their funding, and it just nourishes them without controlling them.
It's positioning itself as the boring, invisible infrastructure that everyone else has to build on top of. It's the water, not the boat.
That's it. By condescending to small states, as the text says, it wins them all over.
Yeah.
It makes itself indispensable by being the path of least resistance. It becomes the fundamental substrate of the entire digital economy.
And because it's the lowest point, all value eventually flows to it, even if it doesn't try to capture it.
Right. It becomes invincible because it has no form to attack. You can't sue it for patent infringement because it claims no ownership. You can't undercut its prices because its core products are free. It only monetizes the sheer volume of the flow.
So the question is, can a capitalist entity truly succeed by not striving? Or is the market inherently a male force that requires the hard and the assertive to survive?
That's the core of it.
Well, I think we are actually seeing a version of this with platform economics. The companies that own the plumbing, the cloud servers, the logistics networks, the app stores, they often win out over the companies that just own the content. Being the utility is much safer than being the star.
But the Taoist twist here would be true non-ownership.
That's the hard part. If Valley Corp truly claims no credit and owns no IP, it might eventually just be consumed or forked by a more aggressive predator who puts a wall around the garden. The Tao assumes that the soft overcomes the hard, but in a quarterly earnings environment, the hard often smashes the soft long before the soft has had time to erode it.
That's the tension, isn't it? The Tao operates on a geological timeline.
And Wall Street operates on a 90-day timeline. Wu Wei might be the ultimate strategy for a 1,000-year company, but it could be a suicide strategy for a 1-year company.
Which is why the sage is often dull and confused to the rest of the world. He's just playing a completely different game with a different clock. He knows that the aggressive company will eventually burn itself out.
just like a strong wind cannot blow all morning.
We are nearing the end of our hour. We have traveled from the nameless void all the way to an AI government. We've covered the metaphysics of emptiness, the utility of the void, the power of water, and the politics of the invisible hand.
It has been a journey of subtraction, I hope. We've tried to strip away some of the misconceptions and get closer to the root.
But I want to leave you, who are listening, with one final provocation. And it comes directly from the text itself. Chapter 81, the very end of the book says, "Sincere words are not fine, fine words are not sincere."
And those who are skilled in the Tao do not dispute. The disputatious are not skilled in it.
A fitting end.
A very fitting end. We have just spent an entire hour using fine words and disputing, or at least discussing, the meaning of this text. By the text's own definition, the very fact that we are talking about it means we might not truly understand it.
Exactly. Perhaps the only way to truly understand the Tao is to turn off this deep dive, stop listening to us, shut the portals of your mind, and just sit in the valley.
But until you do that, we hope this conversation was at least a useful spoke in the wheel.
Thank you for joining Talk Treatises.